Tim Balcon, you are the new CEO of PropertyMark. I asked a number of letting agents questions that they wanted to ask you, and one of the big questions that came up is, why don't landlords ask if letting agents are ARLA members? Talk to me.
We need to change that then, don't we? And actually what we've done is we've joined forces with NRLA. I think some of our members thought it would be a good idea, so we spoke to Jodie, the chair, Ben as chief executive. We're very like-minded. Actually, when you pull our two bodies together, you can then create that demand. And what you do is you then create that demand for a standard in the industry. Now, obviously, we've got the standard for our members, and NRLA have got the standard for their members. Once we can get that out there in higher profile than we currently have, then people will start demanding those standards.
Do you think, is it a lack of money or lack of direction or lack of communication? I mean, if you don't mind me saying, you know, you've got 3 customers in PropertyMark. You've got your members, you've got your non-members that you ideally want to become members, and then you have the punters, you know, buyers and sellers, landlords, homeowners.
The bit that brings us all together, though, Chris, is that standard. And this is something that I think it's fair to say, have we used that standard as well as we could have done? And, well, we're going to change that. So we're going to bring that standard right to the forefront of everything that we do and our members are associated with. That will then translate onto the high street.
I mean, do you think, you've been in role now for 3 months, do you think you could give more marketing collateral to your members to almost use them as your foot soldiers to push out the message? Because it can't, let's be honest, you bring in £8 million a year, that don't go that far.
So I think what our members have heard me saying since I've come here is the relationship with the consumer. They have the relationship with the consumer. We have the relationship with our members. So what we can do is give the members the collateral to say, on the high street, you know, there are 2 differentiators on the high street. One is price and one is quality. And I wouldn't advise anybody to go down the price route because that's a race to the bottom. What differentiates our members from anybody else is that quality, that standard. And that's been part of the profession, and that's subjecting yourself, for want of a better word, to CPD every year to make sure that you uphold those standards on a yearly basis. You can then take that onto the high street and then sell that quality assurance standard.
Okay, because, you know, you've been accused of being invisible, not only to the industry, but also, you know, not only to customers, but to the industry. Do you think now's the time to start waving the band and waving flags a bit more?
Absolutely it is, and this is why I think it's really important that we come together under one PropertyMark, because there are various brands in PropertyMark, and actually the more brands you have, the more diluted that message becomes.
Do you think now, because let's be honest, you are now responsible for both brands? Before, if you don't mind me saying, it felt like 2 organisations with just a the same name across the door. It is your intention, while still believing that you've still got 2 professions underneath it, to drive it as one business?
Well, there's more than 2 professions, but that will go. We will be one PropertyMark. That's the future.
Do you genuinely believe in the future that the words ARLA and National Association of Estate Agents will fade into the distance and the word PropertyMark will rise to the top?
Yes.
Interesting. How do you think members will feel about that, or is it just a name? Like,
well, I have this conversation regularly with members because we have to engage our members in this process. Okay, and I give them an example, and apologies that it's a football example. It's a bit like.
Who do you follow, by the way?
I follow Rotherham United, unfortunately, and that's just a curse of birth. We had this experience where you have to leave your old ground. And that ground, you have 100 years of really good memories, some not so good, but some really good memories. And you have an emotional attachment to that ground. And then somebody promises you new ground in 2 or 3 years' time, and you think, I'm going to have to let this go, and I really don't want to do that. When you sit in the new stadium, then you think, wow, this is fabulous. So I think it's important that the legacy stays with us. You know, we still have that history, and we should be proud of that, really proud of that history. But actually, let's create that new stadium. Let's create that new PropertyMark, because that's going to take us forward for the next 100 years.
And how long do you think you want to stay at PropertyMark? And what do you say is a good achievement for your time? when you do decide by time's up?
When I leave PropertyMark, whenever that time is, and I also think, by the way, I'll put on record, that CEOs have a lifetime. You know, it actually helps PropertyMark with a reasonable amount of refresh. I think the one thing that I'd like to leave PropertyMark with is that we're considered to be a profession, so that when people walk down the high street, they can see the agencies and they understand partly their importance and role in the local economy, into local communities, but the people behind that door are professional people. That would be a good legacy to leave behind.
Thank you for your time today.
You're very welcome.